Joining us now to tell us about his concerns about the Nembe oil spill and other similar spills in the Niger Delta, where little or no remediation and cleanup work have been carried out, is Nemo Bassi of Hope of Mother Earth Foundation. He will also be talking to us about a report titled WellHead Woes, which was released by his foundation just yesterday. Welcome to the show, Nemo Bassi. Good to see you again, and thank you for joining us. Hello, I'm not hearing you. Okay.
It's a pleasure.
Yes, I can hear you now. Okay. Tell us about.
Thank you very much, yeah.
Tell us about your report that was released yesterday, WellHead Woes, in the context of this latest drama in the Nembe area in Santa Barbara, and how Aitio and the relevant stakeholders and authorities have handled the situation.
Yes, thank you so much. We had to issue the report WellHead Woes to ensure that we don't lose sight of the fact that wellhead blowouts have been happening over time and that they will still happen. And so the wellhead blowout at Aitio's, OML, Oil Mineral Lease, Oil Mining Lease 29 at Well 1, was just a confirmation of what we always feared and what we always knew would happen. This is even more important for us to focus on now because the international oil companies have been exploited oil resources in the Niger Delta for about 6 decades, in the process of divesting from onshore fields and moving offshore. Now, they're leaving dilapidated equipment, wellheads that have not been maintained for years, some that are leaking. This particular oil well leaked oil in 2019, so this is not the first time it's having an incident, just that this was a dramatic blowout. And so when oil companies who have left this kind of equipment and installations onshore for so many years suddenly sell to Nigerian corporations, we should ensure that the Nigerian corporations understand that they're buying massive liabilities. They shouldn't just look at whatever petrodollars comes in from what is still functioning, but they should understand that the people who set the booby traps across the Niger Delta will be watching from the sidelines, dancing to the banks, and then they would have to, they're leaving the people to in grave danger, and also the new corporations, the new owners of these facilities will be thinking that they got a good deal, whereas they actually got very bad deals. And so we remember, for example, that there have been oil well blowouts. One happened in Funiwa some years ago. We had where the oil rig by Chevron suddenly burst into flames. We had the Ororo one oil well offshore Ondo State, which had a blowout in May 2020. And last time we checked with satellite images, that issue has still not been addressed. And so this is the essence of the blowout. And the fact that even though Aitio has stopped, they top killed the well on 8th of December 2021, that is not the end of the story. The entire ecosystem has been polluted. And we're talking about a situation where dangerous heavy metals have been released to the ecosystem, and this will go into the food chain. People are going to ingest mercury, they're going to ingest benzene, lead, cadmium. These are things that cause cancers, cause kidney failures, cause birth defects, and it could last for lifetimes. This is why that report was issued.
Well, thank you for that report. It's actually extremely worrying what is described here. But if we want to address the root causes, we have to look at blame. And you say in this report, and I'm quoting you, that all companies have become adept at avoiding blame. But you also cite an article, a news report, about the Minister of Environment at the time, Mohammed Abubakar, saying there were 4,919 oil spills between 2015 and March 2021, and he blamed most of those oil spills on sabotage. 106 he blamed on operational maintenance, and 3,628 he blamed on sabotage. When Aitio then played that familiar card of blaming the community for their own woes, to borrow your word, it was rejected by a lot of parties. So what part does sabotage actually have to play in this?
First of all, we have to understand what sabotage means. Sabotage could ideally be a political action, and so those who carry out sabotage actions would actually sometimes announce in advance. When we had open militancy in the Niger Delta, when the militants were going to carry out an act of sabotage, they announced it by email, by press releases, and then they will actually go ahead to carry out. And so many of the things termed as sabotage could just be petty theft or some other kind of infraction that are going on. They are not really sabotage. What is sabotage? Sabotage is meant to draw attention to something or to negatively affect the economic measures of a state or institution. We've not seen any proven that has not been announced well in advance. And so oil companies have played that card right from the 1980s. I remember there was a time that the late Ken Saro-Wiwa of blessed memory, and the Mossop had to challenge Shell in the British advertising processes in the UK that they should prove that these things are happening about sabotage or stop claiming that sabotage. And actually, those kind of advertisements stopped after that challenge. And so we're seeing situations where victims are being blamed. The local communities have no incentive to blow up an oil well. It's not something you can do. So even the theft of oil is not things that you can carry out without expertise in the industry, without backing up and protection by some other players in the field. A poor villager cannot go to blow up a pipeline with a bucket to carry oil to a drum at the back of his house or a house. And we've heard over the time that massive amounts of crude oil are being stolen every day. We heard from a former minister of Finance in an interview with the Financial Times some years back that 400,000 barrels were being stolen every day, every single day in the Niger Delta. Now that is theft at industrial scale. It's not a thing that a common person could do. It's something that is done with international connections. It's because we don't really check and compare how much is claimed to be exported from Nigeria and how much arrives at the landing ports abroad. If we compare those figures, I'm sure a lot will be seen that we don't really have a very big control on what is going on in the sector. And yesterday, we tried to confirm what had happened at the well that was killed 2 days ago. But when we got closer, and this was very embarrassing, ordinary people don't move about our creeks very freely. Yesterday, every time we got close to wherever there was a gunboat or some military checkpoints, everybody had to raise their hands, and you have to keep your hands up until you are told to put your hands down. Then you have to approach them before they question you, then you move on. And we did this from location to location until we got to a point close to the place of interest of incident when we were now tossed from one houseboat to another, went to meet with the Navy. The Navy said if we had a traditional ruler with us, we had 3 professors with us, we had civil society activists, we had the youths with us. A very widely composed group of people who were coming to court to see what has happened and to applaud those who were able to stop the spill, and then to also ask them to address the other matters that surround this issue. Okay. But at the end of the day, we got to understand that you needed to get the final word had to come from the offending corporation. The polluter has control over the security system, and everything that we could see there was this protection of pollution rather than protection of the people. Okay. And so it's a very frustrating situation in Niger Delta.
I mean, very sad prospect. So, based on this report, 2 things. Is it possible to call for randomized health tests and trials for cadmium in blood levels for residents of that area now, so we even know what we're dealing with? Secondly, is it also time for us to check out what is happening? Because there are 2 types of spill. There's a surface. This one on the wellhead was a surface, and there's a subsea. There's a subsea currently going on in Sagana with a gas leak. That's a spill that's going on currently. Nothing has been done. And thirdly, is it time to also declare a state of emergency like it was done under Shagari in the 80s?
Well, thank you for those loaded questions. Let me start from the last one. This is time, and we've wasted a lot of time. There should be a state of environmental emergency in Bayelsa State, and indeed across the entire Niger Delta. We are living at an age when the petroleum civilization is winding down, and we're allowing this kind of environmental pollution to continue. The world is fighting right now to bring about a new law called ecocide to be recognized as a crime at the same range with genocide and unusual crimes and war crimes. Now, what we saw at Santa Barbara River, what is going on at Sangana, what is going on at Roro Well off the coast of Ondo State, these are very the examples and definitions of ecocide. And this is not just creating harm today, but it's created a lot of harm for the entire generations yet unborn. So really, the emergency should include setting up institutions and structures on the ground that will carry out environmental audit, carry out health audit. And we need a baseline right now in Sangana, in Nembe, a baseline study. And I'm happy there were professors of environmental science with us yesterday when we tried to visit that location, and they could take this up. The University of Nigeria and others can take this up, so that we can, over the years, see what is the progression. Or if we notice high levels of cadmium, of lead, of mercury in the bloodstreams of people, of children, of women, of men, right now we could begin to see what actions can be taken, what steps can be taken to ensure that the harms that could come, that we know would come, are not allowed to happen. Without doing this, just mere sending of palliatives, sending bags of rice, bags of Indomie, cups of whatever to the people, certainly not enough. Yesterday, we were able to visit some fishing settlements who've been impacted by the spill, and you could just see the people are totally exposed to harm. You have oil coating everywhere. At the well side itself, you look at new pictures coming from there, you can find that the mangrove system behind the well is already withered, dead, because the mangrove breathe from the roots. And when oil spills block up the pores on the roots, then the trees simply suffocate. So you have trees that are suffocating, and others who would die over time. This has a lot of implications.
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt you. We're trying to manage time. I know that your report, WellHead Woes, ends with specific recommendations, about 6 or 7 of them, including cleanup, including the president visiting. Can you just help us outline what those specific recommendations are? And it includes the state of emergency that you have talked about. Just take us through those recommendations. And are you optimistic that anybody will listen to those recommendations? Quickly.
Well, if I were not optimistic, I would not be in the struggle for over 30 years. This has been a lifetime of hope, and we still keep on hoping, because if we give up, that will be destructive to the struggle. Now, the president should show leadership by visiting Nembe and seeing what has happened to that environment. It's not enough for the Minister of Environment should visit Nembe and see what has gone on there. It's not enough to stay in Abuja and until people clamor for visits to be done. We've seen it done by other leaders. President Obama went to the Gulf of Mexico shortly after that spill happened. And we have a worse situation going on here in a swampy region that cannot easily be remediated. And we need to see remediation cleanup at the same level as what UNEP recommended for Ogoni started. Not just boom. Booms are very primary ways of trying to control spills. And so we need to see that happen at Nembe. Real environmental remediation with requisite money put down. And we also want to see the government and regulatory agencies requiring corporations who are buying up these oil fields and those who are selling, especially those who are selling, to make hefty deposits, billions of dollars as deposits, to ensure that when issues like this happen, we don't have to start scampering around looking for funding to tackle the situation. These are some of the things we recommended, and we are hopeful that the government will listen. But we have a record of government not listening to the situation in Niger Delta, not even considering this to be a national emergency or something that requires response from NEMA. And we think this has to stop.
Well, you are also recommending health audit. You are also recommending recommendation. You are also recommending independent investigation. And you are saying that up to this moment, we do not know the real cause. ITO is talking about sabotage. And your report is saying that perhaps this is due to the failure of many wellheads that have been abandoned and unused. When would the next wellhead blow out? Thank you very much for that report.